The House is coming in to debate a few bills, including a measure that would raise the national debt ceiling $2.4 trillion without any spending cuts or changes to the budget process. The House is live on C-SPAN.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and call up the bill H.R. 1954 to implement the President's request to increase the statutory debt limit on the public debt.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1954, a bill to implement the President's request to increase the statutory limit on the public debt.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I might consume.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Last December, the President's own Fiscal Commission offered a plan to rein in our budget deficits and debt. And while I did not support the final package, especially the tax increases it proposed, it did contain several meaningful suggestions for ways to get our federal spending under control. Yet last February, when the President submitted his budget for 2012, he ignored their advice and provided no plan to rein in deficits and debt. Last month, Standard & Poor's downgraded the outlook for the U.S. credit rating because Washington appeared to have no plan to rein in our budget deficits and debt. In recent weeks, many congressional Democrats were proving them right when over 100 of them called for an unconditional increase in the U.S. debt limit. They signed a letter calling on their colleagues to establish, quote, the Democratic position in favor of a clean extension of the debt ceiling, end quote, something Secretary Geithner has also repeatedly called for. It's time to come clean with the American people about our deficits and debt. At over $14 trillion, our debt is as large as the entire U.S. economy and is putting the American dream at risk for future generations. It's become an anchor on economic growth, costing us 1 million jobs at a time when the unemployment rate has not been this high for this long since the Great Depression. Erskine Bowles, who chaired President Obama's Fiscal Commission and served as Chief of Staff to President Clinton, has said that the era of debt denial is over. While it doesn't appear that all of his Democrat colleagues have gotten the message, with today's vote, this House will declare to the American people and to the credit rating agencies that business as usual in Washington is over. Not only is the era of debt denial over, but so is Washington's out-of-control spending. Today, we're making clear that Republicans will not accept an increase in our nation's debt limit without substantial spending cuts and real budgetary reforms. This vote, a vote based on legislation I've introduced, will and must fail. Now, most members aren't happy when they bring a bill to the floor and it fails, but I consider defeating an unconditional increase to be a success because it sends a clear and critical message that the Congress has finally recognized we must immediately begin to rein in America's affection for deficit spending. Research by international experts clearly demonstrates that spending reforms, not tax increases, are the most effective path to fiscal consolidation. That means that together we must look for responsible ways to tackle our runaway spending. And though it's difficult and not always popular, it requires us to deal with entitlement reforms that are the largest driver of America's deficits, including health care spending programs like Medicare. We all know that failing to act and address our debt head-on would be very similar to defaulting on our debt. In both cases, we would experience a significant downgrade in our credit rating, which increases interest rates, making payments for things like a car and home loans more expensive. It would also increase the cost of imports, meaning higher gas prices, and would make an already shaky economy even worse, leading to less job creation. The greatest threat to the U.S. economy and to international financial markets would be simply increasing the debt limit without cutting a penny of spending. This vote makes clear that deficit reduction will be part of any bill to increase the debt limit and is a necessary part of this process. A no vote today is a vote to put us on a path toward exactly what the markets and the American people are demanding, an America that is a strong, reliable, and secure financial investment for the future. I urge all my colleagues to vote no on this unconditional increase. And, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Bringing up this bill in this fashion is a ploy so egregious, the Republicans have had to spend the last week pleading with Wall Street not to take it seriously and risk our economic recovery. If Republicans were being truthful, they'd admit they're looking for political cover, but in their doing so, they risk blowing a hole in our nation's economy. They'd acknowledge that their timing is an effort to change the subject less than a week after their plan to end Medicare was dealt a major setback by voters in a New York special election whose Democratic winner will be sworn in tomorrow. To act in good faith, to solve our nation's fiscal problems, the Republicans should focus not on this ploy, but on the budget negotiations being led by the Vice President. Our nation's debt is indeed a problem that requires serious solutions, not ploys that risk another global financial crisis. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I yield to Mr. Pasquale, a member of our committee, a minute and a half.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We better not forget how we got here in the first place. The President, when he raised his hand in January of 2009, inherited a $10.6 trillion debt. Let us not forget history. I know this is like a kabuki dance today. You're not only not sincere about this, but this is all process. The American people, the folks in my district, are not interested in process. They're interested in results. What are the results? How does this help the guy or gal on Main Street? That's what we should be talking about. This bill we know is going to fail. You already told your Wall Street friends, don't worry about it, don't take it serious. That's just like a reality show. The Republicans have warned their Wall Street friends, and as the Wall Street Journal said today, they are in on this quote-unquote joke. But as in poker, they're not all in. Alexander Hamilton founded my city of Paterson, New Jersey, understood that good credit is integral to being a world power. It is by no means a joke. Failure to act will have immediate and dire consequences. Now, the world is not going to collapse this afternoon or tomorrow when this thing goes down, this legislation goes down in a few hours. The majority is willing to risk all that is in order to play political games, to force their failed economic policies. It didn't work in the last 10 years, not going to work now. And, Mr. Speaker, this is serious business, not a joke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I reserve at this time.
The gentleman continues to reserve. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield a minute and a half to another member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Blumenauer of Oregon.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no more important agenda item currently facing Congress than ensuring America pays its bills and honors its obligation. The accumulated choices of Congresses and administrations, past and present, have created the debt and the need to honor the obligations, like an unfunded war in Iraq that's going to cost trillions of dollars, or an unfunded Medicare prescription drug program from our Republican friends. We're not going to default on our debt. With over 100 of my colleagues, I signed a letter calling for a clean extension and offering to work with the Republican leadership so they wouldn't be held hostage to the most extreme members of their party in order to push through draconian proposals that had no chance of being passed, which would unsettle the markets and do damage to things that Americans care about, like their reckless proposal for Medicaid and additional tax cuts that are unaffordable. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership decided not to treat this seriously. They're bringing a bill to the floor. They're not supporting it. They put it on the suspension calendar so it had no chance of passage, and they think somehow this is constructive. Well, it's not. Mr. Speaker, it's time for us to be serious, to avoid taking legislative hostages. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce thinks that Wall Street is in on the joke that is represented by their legislative ploy here today, but I'm not certain that the American public is.
Gentleman's
it's
time has expired.
to stop the games.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume, and I would just say during the 8 years of the Bush administration, the debt limit was raised 7 times for a total of $5.365 trillion. According to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan CBO, the score of President Obama's FY 2012 budget, the debt limit will have to be raised a total of $5.385 trillion during the 4 years he's president. So 8 years versus 4 years. That means that President Obama will have raised the debt limit at twice the pace that President Bush did. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I'll take 10 seconds. I think, Mr. Camp, Standard & Poor's did not downgrade. They threatened. Let's be accurate. I now yield a minute and a half a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Rangel.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for a minute and a half.
I think for those of us who are members of Congress or within the Beltway understand that this is a political thing that's going on at one of the most serious financial times that our nation is facing. I only wonder whether or not our friends and creditors abroad, or those that respect the United States and even try to follow our fiscal ways, in thinking that this is the strongest country in the entire world. But for them to follow what we are doing, it is an embarrassment to the House as well as the Senate that the President of the United States of America would ask that our country be safe from a fiscal point of view by allowing the traditional increase in the debt ceiling. Notwithstanding the political differences we had, we come together as a nation, not to play games on each other for political reasons, but we come together as a symbol for the free world to understand that if it's the United States of America, you can depend on us. But now on the suspension calendar, which is an insult to those people who study the Constitution in the House of Representatives, which is reserved for non-controversial issues, when the whole world knows that this is controversial, but it's certainly not the subject that should be on a calendar called the suspension calendar. So we still have some time to rehabilitate ourselves. I don't know how more ridiculous we can get, but I do hope that we avoid this in the future.
The gentleman from New York's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, Mr. Brady from Texas.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, members, America is undergoing a terribly subpar recovery, one of the worst we've seen, 3 times worse of an economic recovery than under President Reagan, a worse recovery than even what President Obama promised us when he spent all those hundreds of billions of dollars of stimulus money. We have 13 million Americans out of work. Our unemployment rate sky high, and the only reason it's come down a little is that we have fewer people working. The only reason it's come down a little is that we have fewer people working in the workforce than we've had for a quarter of a century. One of the strongest signals we can send to consumers and families and to businesses to restore their confidence is to make sure they understand America is going to get its financial house in order. Republicans in Congress are going to send a statement today that America will get its house in order. This vote today basically says we are not going to grant the President an unconditional increase in how much America can borrow. Here is a good reason why. We took a look at who ran up the debt for America over the years. This chart shows, and we basically said, who controls the purse strings? Congress. We took a look at all the debt that's been incurred since World War II, and what it shows is that the debt held by the public, that's by people, by countries like China, like firms in the Federal Reserve Board, 90% of the debt that's been run up since World War II has been accrued by Democrats, 10% by Republicans. Now, that doesn't leave us as Republicans off the hook. In fact, we're committed to lowering this debt and getting control of spending. But there is a special obligation by our Democrat friends and the President to get this spending under control, to put discipline on the size of the government, to restore some financial soundness, to in effect cut up the credit cards. That's what Republicans are committed to do. That's what Americans, poll after poll, says we need to do as a nation. That's why a no vote on this unconditional debt increase is the right vote, not just for the country, but for our future. I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields back his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
How much time is there on each side, please?
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 14.5 minutes.
And
the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 13 minutes.
We have 14.5 minutes on this.
Correct.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the ranking member on the Budget Committee, Mr. Van Hollen.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank my colleague, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a political stunt. I just heard our friend from Texas on the Republican side say Republicans wanted to tear up the credit card. It was just a few weeks ago when the Republican budget passed this House. All but 4 Republicans voted for it, and let me show you what that did to our credit card. Here it is. We're at about $14 trillion in debt. The budget, all but 4 Republicans voted for, takes us up toward $23, $24 trillion in debt. $8 trillion increase in the national debt by passing the Republican budget. So clearly this isn't about tearing up the credit card. What is this about? This is about threatening to default on the full faith and credit of the United States unless we put into place the Republican budget, including their plan to end the Medicare guarantee and to slash Medicare benefits. That's what this is all about. They've said, whoa, we're going to hold this whole thing up until we get our way. Let me tell you what their way would do to seniors, and we've seen it before on the floor of the House. What it means is that seniors will be paying thousands and thousands of dollars more for Medicare or getting their benefits slashed beginning in 2002, and it gets worse and worse and worse, so that by the year 2030, you're talking about seniors having to pay $12,000 more for their Medicare because the support they're getting is going down while the costs in the private market, which the Republican plan forces them to go into, go up and up and up. So while the costs they face go up and up and up, the help they get under Medicare goes down, 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 and they're left holding the bill. And what's been interesting in the last couple of weeks in connection with this debt ceiling debate is to hear these Republican proposals that say, hey, don't worry about it. You know what? We'll pay China. We'll pay our overseas foreign creditors on their bonds. We'll take care of them. But guess what? We don't have to pay our full faith and credit and our obligations to America's seniors. We don't have to pay Medicare. We don't have to pay Social Security. Pay off the bondholders. Take care of them. But let's follow through on this plan to decimate Medicare. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, because we all understand that we've got to get the deficit under control. We're having negotiations with the Vice President to come up with a responsible, balanced plan, but you're trying to force the Republican plan, which Newt Gingrich just the other day acknowledges was a radical, right-wing piece of social engineering, until, of course, he was bludgeoned by the right wing to withdraw his statement. He was calling the shots as it was. He was saying, you know what, this isn't such a good idea. And what's really outrageous about this charade is you are now threatening the entire U.S. economy in order to get your way on a radical right-wing Medicare plan that's bad for American seniors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Ms. Black.
The gentlewoman from Tennessee is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I came to Washington because I knew that we had a debt problem, but you know what? Once I got here and I started getting all the facts, I realized that we didn't have a debt problem. We have a debt crisis. We're $14.2 trillion in debt, and you know what? That number is even hard to comprehend. It's so large. Over and over, we hear from economists, both conservative and liberal, that we've got less than 5 years to turn things around, or the United States is going to sink under all this debt. We've seen what has happened in Greece and Ireland, and I reject that future for the United States. The time is now to fix this, because we're out of time, and we have an opportunity to change for the good the way Washington is spending. But it doesn't seem the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue thinks that we should change anything. They're happy to keep kicking the can down the road, but you know what? The road has run out. In fact, the administration and over 100 Democrats in this Congress want a straight up and down vote on the debt ceiling. Well, that's what we're going to get today. And when this measure to raise the nation's debt limit fails on the House floor tonight, we will be sending the White House a message loud and clear. You will not get another blank check from us, Mr. President. That's because I and 87 of my freshman colleagues were sent here to Washington with strict marching orders to change the borrow and spend cycle that is bringing our country down. And tonight, the people back home can see that we listen to them.
Additional 30 seconds.
The gentlewoman from Tennessee has an additional 30 seconds.
And that we are acting for them. The American people reject the idea of a clean debt limit vote, and so will the House tonight. Enough is enough. The gig is up, Mr. President, so now is the time to get serious. Get serious about ending this debt, get serious about ending Washington's spending addiction, and get serious about getting this country back on track. I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back her time. Members are advised to address their comments to the chair and not to each other. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, what is the time allocation that's left, please?
Both sides have 11 and a half minutes remaining.
I now yield to a member of our leadership and to a member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Becerra, a minute and a half.
The gentleman from California is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, the last thing that we need right now is for our Republican colleagues to play Russian roulette with a recovering economy by threatening to default on America's bills and triggering an escalation of interest rates and mortgage rates that will have repercussions on every single American family and certainly on every sector of our economy. Yet that's what we have today. Republicans have presented a bill that they have said they're going to vote against. So this whole charade, which is costing taxpayers money because we have to pay for the lights, for the printing, for all the members of Congress and our staff who are working, we have to pay for this so we can simply send the message that we're going to vote no. The New York Times further tells us today that Republican leaders have, quote, privately assured Wall Street executives that this vote is a show. Furthermore, they cite that an executive from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce tells us that, quote, Wall Street is in on the joke. The reality is that what our colleagues on the Republican side are trying to do is furiously try to deflect the public's attention from what they recklessly tried to do to Medicare by ending it, because that is in their proposal in their budget. They are doing everything they can to try to get people to stop focusing on the fact that seniors are being asked to pay for this debt by getting less when it comes to Medicare, and certainly every single American as they age into seniority as well. Mr. Speaker, every family in America has to balance its checkbook. They have to do so responsibly. They have to pay the mortgage and pay the credit card bills. This Congress should do the same. It's not time. This is not the time to play jokes. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this resolution.
The gentleman from California's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Before I yield to the gentleman from New Mexico, I would just yield myself such time as I may consume and say that the Medicare trustees have said that Medicare goes broke in 2024. And so if you support an unconditional debt limit increase, as 100 Democrats wrote to their leaders and asked be made a position of the Democrat caucus, that does nothing about preserving and protecting Medicare for the future. So I would say, no, I will not yield. I will not yield. And so I control the time, Mr. Van Hollen. And so I would say that by supporting an unconditional increase in the debt limit, as more than 100 wrote in a letter to their leaders, again, it would do nothing about preserving that program for the future. So at this time, I yield to the gentleman from New Mexico. 1 minute.
Thank the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. In my district, people ask, what is this vote about, this debt ceiling vote? And so I've created a simple chart that just says it as plainly as we can. We're spending $3.5 trillion in the country each year, and we're bringing in $2.2 trillion. It doesn't work for your family, it doesn't work for your business, and it's not working for the country. In order to make up the difference, we have to borrow that money, except that our bankers are saying no more, just as your bankers would say no more. So we're printing the money to make this system work. It's a scheme that's not working. This chart in the upper right-hand corner says that the whole economy collapses about 2038. So in OMB and CBO both are saying that. We must take care of the spending problem that we have in this country. That's what the debt ceiling is about. We have a law that says we can't borrow than a certain amount of money. If we just extend with no provisions for reform, then we're going to continue to spend this much money every year that we don't have. So let's take care of the problems. Let's do structural reforms in the way that we're spending our money. Let's do structural reforms in our budget. Let's get it in control so that we don't give our kids a failed economy. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
It's now my pleasure to yield a minute and a half to a member of our committee, Mr. Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levin.
The gentleman's recognized for a minute and a half.
The gentleman just raised the issue in question. He said, let me tell you what this is about. Well, let me tell you what this is about. I just came from the Holyoke Soldiers Home this morning. 287 veterans. I represent the Northampton Veterans Hospital. That's what this vote is about. The gentlelady from Tennessee, I wish she was here on January 20th of 2001 when that political party spent their day and night saying, yes, Mr. President, to George Bush. They went along with everything he said. They never even bothered to read Article 1 of the Constitution. This vote is about one thing only, paying your bills. They ran up the debt, and now they don't want to pay their bills. January 19th, 2001, Bill Clinton said goodbye to the country. A $5.7 trillion surplus on hand. $2.3 trillion in tax cuts. A war in Iraq over weapons of mass destruction. A drug prescription benefit called Part D. And they're talking about who owes the bill? This is about responsibility. This is about those VA centers. This is about those men and women in Iraq that need to be equipped with the best possible weaponry. This is about paying the credit card bill that has come in from what they did for all of those years. I would debate any member of the Republican Party. You choose the forum in the House or the Senate, and we'll go through what those 8 years were about. Count me in.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Well, thank you. I'm certainly concerned about the last 8 years, but I'm more concerned about the last 2. I think we've got the third year in a row of trillion-dollar deficits, a presidential budget that doubled the debt in 5, tripled it in 10. I'd like to introduce in the record the Standard & Poor's report on the United States debt and a quote from that report, and without objection.
Without objection, so ordered.
Because, and I quote, of very large budget deficits and rising government indebtedness, and the path to addressing these is not clear. We have revised our outlook on the long-term rating to negative from stable, end quote. The path to addressing these is not clear. We think it's absolutely essential that we not have an unconditional increase in the debt limit, that we have the spending reductions, that we have the structural reforms that we so desperately need in this country. We have 110 members of the other party wrote a letter saying, we want an unconditional increase in the debt. Just keep spending. Don't bring in any spending reductions. Don't bring any long-term reforms. Just keep going the way we've been going. Well, Standard & Poor's says that if we don't address this issue, we'll see and what does that mean when the long-term negative outlook of the debt rating? It means buying a house is more expensive. Buying a car is more expensive. Certainly our ability to sell our bonds around the world will be very difficult to do and make that much more expensive. A downgrade in our debt limit would have the same impact as not increasing the debt limit at all. Financial markets would be disrupted. Borrowing costs would skyrocket. The dollar would plunge, driving up the cost of imports like gasoline and causing higher inflation. It would wreak havoc on our economy. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I yield myself 5 seconds. Mr. Camp, you were the ones who said, just keep spending. We don't say that. I now yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett's recognized for a minute and a half.
Today's vote represents just one more step in the Republican effort to dismantle Medicare. This contrived procedure, demanding an extraordinary two-thirds vote right after the Republican majority announces they won't vote for it, is just a gimmick. You don't have to be much of a math whiz to know if you don't have half the votes in this body, you probably are not going to get two-thirds of the vote. But it's not about the vote. It's about Republicans who are withholding their support of an eventual necessary increase in the limit by demanding that any agreement on that include a weakening of Medicare by imposing something like the Ryan Republican Medicare voucher plan that they all voted for, or some other scheme to just let Medicare wither on the vine. Republicans are willing to jeopardize the full faith and credit of the United States of America, exposing us to great potential economic harm. They think the President will once again yield to their ransom, as he did last December by yielding on more tax breaks for billionaires. Don't yield to this maneuver, Mr. President. Say no to gimmicks and say yes to Medicare, one of the best programs ever initiated by this Congress to assure a little retirement security. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair would remind all members to address their remarks to the chair and not to the other party in the second person. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Louisiana.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Michigan for yielding. We're here today not talking about something as the other side would contend is a joke. This is a very serious issue, and I rise in opposition to an increase in the debt ceiling that would just give the President another couple of $1 trillion to keep spending the way he's been spending for the last 2 years. And I think Americans across the country recognize that this wild spending spree the President's been on the last 2 years has to come to an end. And it's going to start here on this House floor, where we're going to finally invoke fiscal discipline. You know, and of course, over 100 members of the other side have asked for a clean vote. They want another $110 billion, a trillion to keep going along, maybe $2 trillion, to keep spending of money that we don't have. And in fact, if you look at their plan not only will double the national debt in 5 years, which I guess they're okay with, but it also allows Medicare to go bankrupt. And we're not going to sit by and let Medicare go bankrupt. We're not going to sit by and let them keep spending money that we don't have. We're finally going to say enough is enough. We're going to put spending controls in place. And frankly, it would be irresponsible to increase the debt ceiling without reforms that actually start cutting spending and putting our country back on a path to a balanced budget. Now, maybe some on the other side don't want to see us get to a balanced budget, which is why they've dramatically increased spending over the last 4 years up until when Speaker Pelosi was fired. But frankly, the American people have said enough is enough. Stop the spending binge. Enough of giving the President this uncontrolled use of the American credit card. Let's start reining in spending. Let's put those controls in place. Let's get our country back on a path of fiscal sanity so we don't have these groups like S&P saying that they will downgrade the bond rating of the United States
Will the gentleman yield to talk about
some
some
That's
facts?
not something we can tolerate. And maybe the gentleman on the other side might want to, and I'm sure during your time you'll have the opportunity to address that.
I'd like to ask you a question,
but frankly, what we've got to do is start installing fiscal discipline back in this House, and we're going to start doing it now. And it means no more blank checks, no more unbridled spending. And so the President's going to have an opportunity to join us in that debate. But frankly, it starts tonight. And we say we're not going to keep giving that credit card limit to the President without real reforms. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
It's now 3 minutes. It's now my pleasure to yield to the whip, Mr. Hoyer from Maryland. 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Unfortunately, this is a serious issue on which serious time has not been allotted because you put this on suspension. This is a serious issue. Our country is in crisis from a fiscal standpoint. Now, I wanted the gentleman to yield because I don't think the gentleman has any idea what the facts are. 89% increase in the debt under Ronald Reagan. He could have vetoed every one of those bills. Under George Bush, 115% increase in the debt. Under Bill Clinton, less than 40. Ladies and gentlemen, this issue is an important issue that is being treated not as an adult. This is not the adult moment of which Speaker Boehner spoke. And you didn't mention that the budget you voted for, I presume, I'm not sure, increased the debt by $1.9 trillion between now and October 1st of this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not an honest debate. This is not an honest proposal. This is a serious issue. TARP was a serious issue, and the American public didn't want to see it passed. And had it not passed, we would have gone into depression. Who said that? George Bush, Hank Paulson, the Republican Secretary of Treasury, and Ben Bernanke, the Republican-appointed head of the Federal Reserve. It was a tough vote. And so what did we do for America? We came together, Republicans and Democrats, more Democrats supporting the Republican president's request than his own party, to save America from depression. We need to deal with this issue, ladies and gentlemen, of America, seriously. Not in 20-minute debates on each side, not as a simplistic suggestion that somehow President Obama caused this. $1.3 trillion in wars we haven't paid for, a drug prescription bill we haven't paid for, tax cuts that your party voted for, not mine, that we didn't pay for. Should we have tax cuts? That's fine, but we ought to pay for them. Not have my great-grandson, who was just born a week ago, pay for it. That's what you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to vote no on this. We ought to vote for this. We ought to have a clean bill. And we ought to have both sides coming together and saying, America needs this for debts that we have incurred. What I tell town meetings is it's like you go to Macy's, you take out your credit card and you charge $200 worth of goods. And then you go home that night, your husband or your wife, you sit down and say, look, we got too much debt, we need to have a debt limit. Put a $100 debt limit on us. And then Macy's sends you a bill and you send them back a letter saying, no, I got a debt limit. It's $100. So you send them a check for $100. They send back a letter saying, hey, no more credit, and guess what? We're suing you. This debt limit extension is for what we have already incurred. This debt limit extension vote is about whether or not we're going to pay our bills. But I will tell you this, we're going to see how many of your folks vote for paying our bills.
The whip is so eloquent, I yield another 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30
I'm looking
seconds.
forward to seeing how many of your folks are going to say, yes, we need to pay our bills. America, we need to be a good debtor as well as a good creditor. We're going to see how many of your folks vote. I got just a sneaking suspicion not going to be very many, if any. It's a good demagogic vote, frankly, ladies and gentlemen. And if we vote for it, guess what? Oh, you're for raising the debt limit without any fiscal discipline. Well, when we were in charge, When the President of the United States wouldn't let you do some of the things you wanted to do, Bill Clinton was there to veto things. We had a surplus for 4 years in a row, and we didn't increase the debt once. Under George Bush, we increased it 7 times. I yield back the balance of my time and urge a no vote on this irresponsible piece of legislation that should have been handled in a bipartisan fashion.
You know, regular order, Mr. Speaker.
I regret that we don't have regular order on the floor.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 114 members of the other party signed a letter to the leader who just spoke and asked for an unconditional increase in the debt limit. I know that's not maybe a fact they want to acknowledge now, but it is so important that we have a clear path forward on this given what the rating agencies are saying about our debt. They're saying it's not clear how we're going to deal with our indebtedness. It is so important that we set forward that when we address this issue, there is going to be the kind of spending reductions and structural reforms we need. That is going to have to be part of this discussion. We can't continue to have it clouded with this idea that we might have a debt limit increase without any of those. That's why it is so important to send this very strong signal today. I hope all of the members of your party join me in voting no on this bill. And at this time I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Michigan.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the chairman for yielding me this moment to address the American people and the students that might be watching on TV or here in the gallery. Once again, you see the problem that we have here in Washington. We cannot have a fact-based conversation with the American people, which they desperately want. I talk to a lot of students back at home, and I say, how many of you are going to have a summer job? A lot of them raise their hands, say, okay, we're going to say you're going to make $220 a week. We got a problem. You're going to take your credit card and you're going to spend $370 a week. How long do you think you can do that as you're saving up for college, as you're saving for that car or that piece of a computer equipment? Can you do that all summer? The kids look at me and say, of course not. Don't be dumb. You can't do that. And then I say, you know what? Add 10 zeros to it. Add 10 zeros to that, and that's exactly what we are doing here in the United States House of Congress, what we have been doing repeatedly, both sides of the aisle, with both administrations. It doesn't matter. We have got to get this under control. Because when you add those 2 zeros, just like my friend from New Mexico was talking about, we take in $2.2 trillion a year, we spend $3.7 trillion a year. It's time to tear up that credit card, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
How much time is there from our minimum 20 minutes? How much time do we have?
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 3.5 minutes. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 4.5 minutes.
Mr. Camp has 4.5? I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from North Dakota.
The gentleman from North Dakota is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every time I talk with North Dakotans, one message is clear. Washington is on an unsustainable path, and it needs change. Out-of-control spending is unacceptable. Our rising debt is unacceptable. And allowing this debt to grow without reform is unacceptable. This country borrows $4 billion a day. Fixing this mess will require real reforms. It requires a serious, honest conversation about where this country stands today and how we want to leave this country for the next generation. It's irresponsible to leave our children with a nation that has a mountain of debt. It's unacceptable to increase our debt without making any attempt to reduce it. We cannot expect to do the same thing. We cannot do the same thing over and over and expect different results. I've heard the North Dakota people, and I will not support any debt limit increase that does not contain significant cuts and budgetary reforms. It's time to stop the reckless spending. It's time to reduce the size of government. It's time to enact policies that will put America back on track. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from North Dakota yields back the remainder of his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch.
The gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch, is recognized for a minute and a half.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I signed that letter. I led that letter, and I'll tell you why I did. America faces two challenges. One is we must pay our bills. Whether those bills were incurred for a war that you supported or you opposed, whether those bills were incurred by a Congress you served in or you didn't, whether it was for a prescription drug program that you were for or against, a bill incurred, an obligation incurred, is an obligation that must be paid. That is the fundamental responsibility that I acknowledge as a citizen, that I acknowledge as an American, that I acknowledge as a congressman. Second, this question of a long-term deficit reduction plan, we need it. You are right. We understand that. Where is it? You have the opportunity in this legislation to present your plan that will get us on a glide path to fiscal balance. It's not here, suggesting either you don't have a plan or the plan you want to present doesn't have the support of the American people. We are playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun in the American economy, and the deficit clock is ticking. This requires a substantial response. The approach taken, a suspension vote, trivializes both our short-term obligation to pay our bills and our long-term obligation to have a long-term deficit reduction plan. And the fact that this is done, being sponsored by folks who immediately say they are against what they propose, and then quietly make phone calls to Wall Street saying they are for what they just voted against, is what is Washington business as usual that people are tired of and is not solving our problem. The default clock is ticking. I yield back.
The gentleman from Vermont yields back his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I reserve at this time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I just want to be sure of the time. We have 2 minutes, do we?
The gentleman, Mr. Levin, from Michigan, has 2 minutes.
And the gentleman from Michigan, Mr.
Mr. Camp from Michigan, has 3 minutes.
I'd ask Mr. Camp, do you have other speakers? I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, if the Treasury had $1 for every time someone says they want to cut the deficit, we wouldn't have one. So let's stop talking about cutting the deficit and talk about how we can cut the deficit. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs rather than pay whatever the drug companies demand and save $300 billion over 10 years. Let's stop occupying Iraq and Afghanistan and paying their bills to the tune of $110 billion a year and bring the troops home. Let's stop giving $80 billion in tax breaks to the oil companies that made record profits last year. Let's require people who make more than $1 million a year to pay just a little bit more to help reduce this problem. And let's have sensible reductions in other departments of government. This is not a time for us providing cover to a political party. It's a time for us to cover the obligations to our seniors, not by abolishing Medicare, but by improving it, to cover obligations to our veterans, and cover obligations to the country. We will come back in a couple weeks and do what we should be doing tonight, which is to raise this debt ceiling and protect this country. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers. I will just reserve and close.
The gentleman reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Camp. You're going to close. I now yield our final minute to our leader, who will close on our behalf, Mrs. Pelosi from the great state of California.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Levin, for your compliment to my great state of California. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I first heard that this legislation was coming to the floor, I anticipated with some positive thoughts of, yes, this is the right thing to do. America must pay its bills. We know how to do that. We want to go forward assuring the American people that when we decide not to default on our debt, that we are showing our strength, even though it may be difficult for people to support that. Then I heard that it was going to come up like this on Sunday. They told us it would be up on Tuesday, and that the bill is predicated on a false premise. It says the Congress finds that the President's proposed budget of the United States government fiscal year 2012 necessitates an increase in the statutory debt of up $2.4 trillion. Well, that's just absolutely not the case. First of all, that bill never passed the House, and it never passed the United States Senate. What did pass the House, though, was the Republican budget plan, which abolishes Medicare, gives tax breaks to big oil, gives tax breaks to corporations sending jobs overseas, weakens the middle class, and does not create jobs, and, in fact, increases the deficit by $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion increases the deficit. So what are we doing here today? What are we doing? The Republicans have introduced a bill which they have now resoundingly said they will oppose. So where is the good faith effort here? We are, I believe, in good faith efforts in a bipartisan way, House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, with Vice President Biden, to find ways to make sure we don't find ourselves in this situation again. As a mother and as a grandmother, I have absolutely no intention of passing any bills, personal or official, onto my children or grandchildren. And let me say that Democrats know how to clean up the debt. We've had to do it before. The Reagan-Bush debt that President Clinton inherited was a massive debt, and because we took the vote for the economic plan in 1993, we were on a path to fiscal soundness. The last 4 budgets of the Clinton administration were in balance or in surplus. I believe the Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer, addressed these numbers earlier, and I associate myself with his remarks and his passion on this subject. Coming into the Bush years, President Clinton put us on a path of $5.6 trillion, a trajectory of $5.6 trillion in surplus. One of the biggest turnarounds in this fiscal situation in our country happened under President Bush. So all this talk about deficits and their immorality and the rest, I agree. But where was everybody when President Bush was giving tax breaks to the wealthiest people in our country, which did not create jobs, were giving away the store to the pharmaceutical industry in the Medicare Part D bill at the cost, tremendous cost to the deficit, and not paying for the wars? Again, we place our men and women in uniform in harm's way. They make us the home of the brave, the land of the free. We want them to have what they need. They want us to pay for it. We owe them an obligation to build a future worthy of their sacrifice, and that future does not contain unlimited growing debt. Unlimited growing debt. Never before in the history of our country have we lowered taxes for the rich while we were at war. This is an all-time first. So here we are. We inherit this debt of the Bush administration. That's why we're in the situation we're in. So as our colleagues try to characterize this as we're raising the debt limit so there can be more spending, no, we're not. We're avoiding default of the massive debts accrued during the Bush administration. That's why we are here. So to predicate this legislation, which I really, coming out of last week, thought maybe that was something I would support, unencumbered legislation so that we would pay our bills and not be a deadbeat nation. Instead, they predicate it, again, on a false premise. The facts are these. The Republican budget did pass this House. The Republican budget, they just want to change the subject from Medicare. That's all. They just want to change the subject from Medicare, so let's bring this up at the drop of a hat in the first hours back from Memorial Day. They want to change the subject from Medicare, but the facts are these. In their Republican budget, which is the predicate for this legislation, they abolish Medicare. Not only that, they make prescription drugs more expensive for seniors. They eliminate prevention services for seniors, which make them healthier and lower cost to us. They do all of this while also, as far as our children are concerned, cutting education for our children, reading teachers for our children, making college more expensive for nearly 10 million young adults. All of this, a travesty in terms of the hopes and aspirations of middle-class, middle-income families in our country. And then, to add insult to that injury, they come in here with a bill that they have to bring up immediately so they can oppose it. Well, even the Chamber of Commerce has said, we're all in on the joke. But it just isn't that funny. If you're a struggling family in America hoping to keep your job, your home, be able to send your children to college, save for the future, have some confidence about your economic security, if you're a senior and you depend, or others who depend on Medicare, to have it abolished hurts your economic as well as your health security. So this is about priorities. A budget should be a statement of our national values. What is important to us as a country, the education of our children, the respect of the dignified retirement for our seniors, job creation, that we have a moral obligation to create jobs, so we have jobs for our workers and they can have their better future as well as make our country more competitive. Reducing the deficit. We've done it once, the Democrats did. We can do it again, hopefully in a bipartisan way under the auspices that have been created for this purpose. We're right in the middle of it. We come in and say, okay, let's introduce a bill based on a false premise, and then let's all oppose it. Well, I'm glad you're opposing it because you're opposing the false premise that you have in this bill. But let's get serious. Let's get serious about this. And American people are crying out for help. Do you know that the tax cuts on which this deficit has grown, the tax cuts to the wealthy, did not create jobs? They increased the deficit. They did not create jobs. More jobs were created in the second year of the Obama administration in the private sector than in the 8 years of the Bush administration. So this talk that tax cuts for the high end are going to create jobs, it just didn't happen. So we don't want to talk about the past. We want to know what we're going to do in the future, but it's important to learn from the past so we don't do it again, so we're not in this situation again. So as I said, I thought of an unencumbered, if that would be the case, bill that would come to the floor. I looked favorably upon that till I saw what is in here, which isn't right. And I'm glad that hopefully it will have a big, strong vote against it. I want to commend my colleague, Congressman Welch. He was, in his letter, he's not demanding anything. He is saying, let's get together and talk about how we can pass a bill that is a clean debt limit bill. That's what he's talking about. Why don't we follow his lead on that and get together and talk about how we can do this in a way that is clean and or at the same time has a plan, a bipartisan plan to reduce the deficit so that we can do just that as we increase jobs and strengthen the middle class. Thank you, Mr. Welch, for your leadership in that regard, and I know that it has been mischaracterized here, but I salute you for your leadership on that score. So my colleagues, you'll vote the way you vote, but the fact is that what is happening on this floor is not serious. It's not serious. But the subject it addresses is serious. It's time for this Congress of the United States to get serious about debt reduction, job creation, and to stop this assault on Medicare, which is the basis for this legislation today. With that, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentlewoman from California, the minority leader, yields back her time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
And, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 1954.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, last February, when the President submitted his budget for 2012, he did not provide any plan for reining in deficits and debt. And the administration called for a clean increase in the debt limit, or an increase in the debt limit that was unconditional, that had no spending reductions or structural reforms to try to address the problem that we face. And it assumed $2.4 trillion in borrowing authority, or an increase in the debt limit of about $2.4 trillion. 114 Democrats have asked the leadership of their party for an unconditional vote on the debt limit. And I would say that my colleagues on the other side have been very reminiscent about the Bush years, and I would just say that in 4 years, the debt under the Obama administration will exceed the Bush administration in 8 years. Or another way of putting that is the debt under this president is going up at twice the rate as it did under President Bush. So I would just say that it is important that we send a clear signal that there is not going to be an unconditional increase in the debt limit, that we're serious about addressing our debt and deficit problems as a country. We've seen the signals that we've gotten from the financial markets. We've heard what our constituents have said, and that it is very important that we bring the kinds of spending reductions and reforms that we need to this debate. So I urge a no vote, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his